understand. Y'all can hear my sexual voice. Finna be reacting to the worst submarine deaths ever. Yeah, we finna be reacting to the worst submarine deaths ever by SimplePaint. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into this joint.
USS S4 tragedy. On December 17, 1927, the submarine USS S4 was conducting routine speed trials off Provincetown, Massachusetts. The vessel ran submerged along a measured nautical mile, testing her maneuverability. Meanwhile, the Coast Guard destroyer Paulding steamed toward the harbor at 18 knots, searching for rum runners during Prohibition. At 3:37 in the afternoon, as S4 began to surface, the officer aboard Paulding spotted a periscope wake close on his port bow. He ordered hard astern and full right rudder, but there wasn't enough time. Paulding's bow struck the submarine, tearing 2 holes in her hull. S4 sank immediately to the bottom, 100 feet down. 34 of the 40 men aboard survived the initial impact. 6 men remained trapped in the forward torpedo room. The next morning, rescue ships arrived, and veteran diver Thomas Eady descended to the wreck. When he tapped on the torpedo loading hatch, he received 6 slow taps in reply. The men inside were alive. Throughout that day and the next, divers battled terrible weather, struggling to attach an air hose to the submarine. A nor'easter battered the bay with high winds. Inside the torpedo room, 25-year-old Lieutenant Graham Fitch and his 5 men lay in their bunks between torpedoes, wrapped in blankets, breathing slowly to conserve oxygen. They could hear the divers working outside, but the weather only worsened. One diver's airline fouled at 8:45 that night. Eady went down again to save his friend, exhausted from his earlier dive. By December 22nd, 5 days after the collision, the tapping had stopped. All 40 men were confirmed dead. The 6 in the torpedo room had survived nearly 3 days in darkness, waiting for a rescue that never came. USS Tang tragedy. On the night of October 24, 1944, Commander Richard O'Kane positioned the submarine USS Tang for her final attack in the Taiwan Strait. She had already sunk multiple Japanese vessels over the previous 2 days. Now, near Turnabout Island, Tang surfaced to finish off a damaged transport. The crew had been at battle stations for hours. Tang had fired 22 torpedoes during this patrol, and 21 had found their marks. 2 torpedoes were at 2:30 in the morning on October 25th, O'Kane gave the order to fire the 23rd torpedo. It ran hot, straight, and normal toward the crippled transport at 900 yards. The crew watched it strike home. 1 torpedo left. O'Kane ordered the final Mark 18 electric torpedo loaded and set the depth at 10 feet. At close range, the torpedo fired. For the first few seconds, it appeared to run true. Then, without warning, it broached the surface, porpoising wildly. The torpedo curved sharply to the left in a circular run, heading directly back toward Tang. O'Kane shouted for emergency speed and threw the rudder hard over. The submarine accelerated and turned, but it wasn't enough. 20 seconds after firing, their own torpedo struck Tang in the stern near the aft torpedo room. The explosion was catastrophic. The submarine's after compartments flooded instantly. Tang went down by the stern, sinking rapidly to 180 feet. 9 men had been on the bridge during the attack. O'Kane and 8 others were thrown into the water. Below, some crew members attempted to escape using Momsen lungs. The freezing water claimed most of them. Of the 87 men aboard Tang that night, only 9 survived. Japanese escorts picked them up the next morning. Tang's own torpedo had become her executioner. Sergei Preminin, K-219. On October 3, 1986, the Soviet ballistic missile submarine K-219 was on routine patrol 680 miles northeast of Bermuda. The 15-year-old vessel carried 16 nuclear-tipped missiles and a crew of 119. Around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, a seal in missile tube 6 failed, allowing seawater to leak into the tube. The water reacted with residual missile fuel. At 5:14, the missile exploded. 3 sailors were killed instantly. Toxic fumes filled the compartments. Captain Igor Britanov ordered the submarine to surface and scrammed the reactor, but a new problem emerged. The temperature gauges on the twin nuclear reactors climbed to dangerous levels. Without functioning reactors and with control systems damaged, a nuclear meltdown became a real possibility. The automatic reactor shutdown system had been destroyed. Someone would have to enter the reactor compartment manually to lower the control rods. Lieutenant Nikolai Belikov volunteered. 20-year-old seaman Sergei Preminin went with him. Wearing gas masks and protective suits, they entered the reactor compartment where temperatures exceeded 70 degrees Celsius. Belikov managed to lower 3 of the 4 control rod assemblies before collapsing from heat exhaustion. Preminin dragged him out. The 4th rod assembly remained active. Preminin, despite his exhaustion, volunteered to go back in alone.
That's a real
Using
man
the
right
last
there.
oxygen canisters, he entered the reactor room and manually cranked down the final rod assembly. He succeeded, preventing a meltdown, but when Preminen tried to leave, the hatch wouldn't open. A pressure differential had built up between the reactor chamber and the corridor
Why you
outside.
ain't close
His
it?
colleagues tried desperately to force the hatch from their side, but it wouldn't budge. Preminen's oxygen ran out. The young sailor died in the reactor compartment he had just saved.
Damn.
K-219 sank 3 days later. K-278 Komsomolets. On April 7, 1989, the Soviet submarine K-278 Komsomolets cruised at 1,100 feet depth in the Norwegian Sea, about 112 miles southwest of Bear Island. The vessel was on her first operational patrol. Komsomolets was unlike any other submarine in the world. Her titanium hull had allowed her to dive to 3,350 feet, a world record for military submarines. At 10:55 in the morning, power fluctuations rippled through the boat. Minutes later, fire broke out in compartment 7. A high-pressure airline had ruptured, spraying oil onto a hot turbine. Fanned by 8,000 pounds per square inch of compressed air, the fire spread rapidly.
What?
Smoke poured through cable penetrations into
8,000
adjoining
pounds,
compartments.
my nigga?
The reactor scrammed automatically, and the submarine lost propulsion. Captain Evgeny Vanin ordered an emergency blow. 11 minutes after the fire started, Komsomolets surfaced. Most of the crew evacuated to the deck, but the captain and 5 officers remained inside, attempting to save their submarine. Compressed air continued feeding the flames. At 4:30 in the afternoon, more than 5 hours after surfacing, Komsomolets began to sink. Vanin ordered the crew on deck to abandon ship. He and 4 officers climbed into a special escape pod built into the sail. In the chaos, they lost track of their 6th companion. The 5 men sealed the pod and activated it. The sphere shot to the surface. When it arrived, a flaw in the mechanism caused the hatch to explosively decompress. 2 men died instantly. Captain Vanin and another officer were knocked unconscious. Only 1 man swam free. On the surface, 50 crew members floated in the frigid water. Soviet rescue efforts were slow. A civilian fishing vessel arrived an hour and 20 minutes later. By then, hypothermia had claimed 34 more lives. In total, 42 of the 69 crew members perished. As 12, Losharik tragedy. On the evening of July 1, 2019, the Russian nuclear-powered submarine AS-12 Losharik was conducting deep-sea operations in Russian territorial waters in the Barents Sea. The vessel's pressure hull was constructed from 7 spherical titanium compartments that gave her the ability to dive to 20,000 feet. The crew that day included some of the most experienced submariners in the Russian Navy. 7 were captains of first rank, and 2 had been awarded Hero of the Russian Federation medals. Commander Denis Delansky was in charge. Around 8:30 in the evening Moscow time, while operating at approximately 1,000 feet depth, an electrical short circuit occurred in Losharik's battery compartment. The submarine had recently been equipped with new lithium-ion batteries. The technology was still relatively untested in submarine applications. The short circuit sparked a fire. Lithium-ion batteries, once ignited, burn with extreme intensity and produce toxic fumes. The crew fought desperately to contain the blaze, but the fire spread rapidly. Smoke filled the compartments. The crew donned portable breathing apparatus and continued fighting for over 40 minutes. As their oxygen supplies dwindled, they requested permission to evacuate. Losharik was docked with her mother submarine. A 4-man rescue team from the mothership entered Losharik to assist. They managed to save 1 civilian technical specialist, but the situation deteriorated. The battery compartment exploded. The blast and toxic smoke overwhelmed the remaining crew and the rescue team. At 9:30, fishermen nearby reported seeing a submarine surface rapidly. Losharik was towed to Severomorsk Naval Base. 5 crew members survived with smoke inhalation and concussions. 14 men, including the entire rescue team, were found dead inside the submarine. All 14 were buried with honors in St. Petersburg. Ocean Gate Titan tragedy. On the morning of June 18, 2023, the submersible Titan began its descent toward the Titanic wreck site, 12,500 feet below the North Atlantic. The vessel carried 5 passengers: Stockton Rush, the CEO of Ocean Gate who piloted the craft; French Titanic expert Paul Henry Nargeolet; British businessman Hamish Harding; and Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood and his 19-year-old son, Suleiman. The Titan launched from the support ship Polar Prince at 8 o'clock in the morning. Unlike traditional submersibles with steel or titanium hulls, Titan's pressure vessel was constructed primarily from carbon fiber. Rush piloted the submersible using a modified Logitech video game controller. Multiple engineers and industry experts had raised concerns about the experimental hull design and lack of proper certification. Rush had dismissed these warnings. Communication between Titan and Polar Prince occurred via text message. The descent proceeded normally at first. About 30 minutes in, communications were lost, but this had happened before. Communications resumed nearly an hour into the dive. At 1 hour and 33 minutes into the descent, at approximately 9:45, Titan sent its last communication. The message indicated they had dropped 2 descent weights, a routine adjustment. 6 seconds later, an automatic ping was sent, then nothing. Polar Prince waited. The scheduled resurfacing time came and went. At 5:40 that evening, when Titan failed to return, the U.S. Coast Guard was notified. A massive international search operation began. The world watched for 4 days as rescue teams raced against Titan's 96-hour oxygen supply. On June 22nd, a remotely operated vehicle discovered a debris field 1,600 feet from the Titanic's bow. Pieces of Titan's hull were scattered across the seafloor. Analysis of acoustic data revealed that at the moment communication ceased, sensors had detected a brief, violent sound. The carbon fiber hull had failed catastrophically. The implosion occurred in milliseconds. All 5 occupants died instantly. If you'd like to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and feel free to drop some.
I love everybody, man. It's crazy. But yeah, got more videos coming. Stay tuned.